Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. Few housekeeping items real quickly. Please mute yourself during the presentation so we don't get extraneous animal noises, children, construction, whatever. We will be recording the session today. So if you don't want to be recorded, just don't say anything.
Can you say bad words?
Sure.
Okay, good.
Um,
I once said one.
So other than that, I think we're ready to roll. So obviously you all know that we have Ashley Stohl and David Carroll with us today in Peanut Press. And we're going to hand it off to them and let them roll for a while. It's all yours.
Okay, we're done. Any questions?
Sounds good.
No, go ahead, Ashley. Do the technological stuff.
The technological stuff? I gotta share screen. All right, wait, don't
Are we
look.
just supposed to show the big picture of the middle?
There you go. It won't let you
Yay.
do it if you're already going. Okay, Peanut Press, we're Peanut Press. Peanut Press consists of.
Wait, let's slow down a second. Go
Oh.
back one. Notice the peanut being pressed. Steve Reitzig did that. He's a great designer in New York. Steve Reitzig. Okay, now you can go.
Okay. Or as we say, nuts in a vice.
I never said that.
I say that.
Okay,
So-
this is me. I'm David Kellum. I'm a photographer. Eileen Smithson took this picture of me at a store. Photo eye. You go.
I'm Ashley Stohl and I'm a photographer.
We can't hear the hysterical laughter. Okay.
Just our own. Here's a little bit about David.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about me. So I've been a photographer. Well, let's say this. I bought a camera and like pointed at something with intention other than like taking a picture of my friends at around 18. So since 18, I've been taking pictures, and since 21, my whole life has I've supported and earned myself and earned money exclusively from photo or from the photo industry. So anything from like being a magazine columnist to a photographer, but 98% of it was me being a photographer. And then my joke usually is with this photo. So just to understand, I've done two kinds of photography: commercial, where I get money and try to please a client, and pictures for myself in a compulsive kind of obsessive way that's been going on for, get ready kids, over 40 years. But this is an audience of my era, so I like that. So it doesn't sound so crazy. So anyway, when I usually start a talk, I say, turn around, here's your chance to leave because I'm clever. All right, go to the next one. I could lose these. So whenever I travel, I take pictures for myself and others. This is in Rome at a gelato, the best gelato place in Rome, at least my favorite, that Stanley Tucci did not go to recently. But he was at a restaurant around the block by the Pantheon that was great. But this is, and I'm blanking on the name of this place. So
Which is not going to be ruined that it's on the show.
Yeah, believe me, this is just the outside, you know. It's packed, but it's great. If you're in Rome, it's by the Pantheon. Okay, next. By the way, we're doing this to show you a little bit that we're actually photographers and not just some assholes who decide to publish people's books because we figure we can rip off a bunch of people with credit cards. This is in Connecticut, and often I get questions like, is that a window? From people who think that's actually a boat. Okay, next. So Robert Frank took the good picture in Montana of this, and I spent the last 35, 40 years trying to copy it, but my version, and this is my version, but I like it. It's in Alamogordo in New Mexico, and it had that. I think I turned the air conditioner up to high to get the good effect.
For my book, I had gone everywhere except Borough class because I wanted to show the rest of Haiti. And now
What's happening?
I don't know. Do we want to make that?
I think we're getting broadcast. We're getting the airport. Okay, we'll go to the next one. This is no kites. This is me like in New York, just always looking for pictures to take. Whenever it's cloudy out, I find a spot. Go ahead. So this is at a lake house in Maine. And the first time I showed this somewhere, I guess like 10 years ago, somebody actually said to me, is that person drowning? So I said, obviously.
Obviously,
The
that's
last
why
picture I took.
and took the picture.
Yeah. Was I going to go out and get wet? All right, next one. This is in Florida. This does not exist anymore. And a good friend of Ashley and mine used this on the cover of a book. What was the name? She's a poet, and the book was called Sex and Violence. I don't know the name. But anyway, she used this for the cover of books.
Landscape with sex and violence? Landscape with, oh,
Yeah,
I'm
Landscape
a
with Sex and Violence.
horrible
Sure.
person for forgetting.
Yes, but this is, so that's that. Go on. I was at, this is Outhouses on a Hill. Let's say that.
Tell the story.
New
The story's
Mexico.
funny.
So I was at a, I'm not sure I want to tell the story.
Okay.
Go on. We'll go to the next one. This is Joe, and he has a fish. And this is up in the Arctic. So I used to do assignments, and I've been to the Arctic about 7 or 8 times, depending upon what parts of, way up high Arctic, where there's no trees, where the ocean's frozen, all that stuff. And Joe's work, came along with me because, you go there for a minimum of, I think, 10 or something days because there's only 2 flights in and out. And Joe saw somebody who had fished the previous day and said, "Where do you get fish?" Which is the dumbest question because the Inuits are always on the land. And so our guide, Elijah Panapakuchu, who became a friend of mine, my son's middle name is actually Elijah because of him, said, "Oh, you can go fishing if we find somebody tomorrow." So they went fishing and came back, and Joe held this up. And I said, "Don't move." And I took the pictures. Remember, it's 40 below, so you got to do everything very slowly. You don't want your film to shatter. You want to understand how to take the picture. It's very cold. So anyway, and then we ate it. It was about the best sushi I ever had. It's Arctic char. That's fresh. Next. That's a horse. Actually, this is in the Mojave, and behind me is Joe sleeping on the hood of our car. So there's Joe again with the fish, but he's behind me. Okay, next. This is a picture I took in the subway I used to work at CBS. I was a director at CBS. And downstairs, the 42nd Street subway was under the Chrysler building. I was in the Chrysler building, that my division was there. And I sort of ran along with this, taking the picture. It's probably for technical people. If you look at the flag, it's blurry. Since I only shoot film, this is probably a 15th, so you got to kind of move with the car. And I always wondered if she's looking at me. I'm not sure that she was, but I would love to give her a print, but how would I find her? It'd become a whole different incident. Oh, this is supposed to be, all right, so I took this picture in Turkey and in Cappadocia, in the central southern part of Turkey. And it was actually an experiment. I saw a tortoise walking across a road down there. I pulled over and I literally just put my camera in its face and took some pictures. Now remember, it's film, so I don't know what it's going to look like. Then when I got back, I saw it and I liked it. So it was in a show in Chicago, and Ann Tucker, emeritus, well, she was the curator of the Museum of Fine Art in Houston. She's a big deal. She bought this at a show. So when my first book came out, I wanted her to write the intro. And so I contacted her, and it took a while to get her on the phone because she was in Japan. She's doing different things. But this is sort of like one of those stories that's maybe good for people to know who are photographers. But I persisted. He persisted. And I was mailing postcards to her assistant of my photographs. So I finally get her on the phone because her assistant knew me. And I said, "Hi, I'm David Carroll. I'd like you to write an intro for a book of mine." And she goes, "Well, I only write intros for books we publish at the museum." I said, "But you have my turtle on the wall." And she goes, "That's your turtle? You took that picture?" I'm like, "Yeah." So she said, "All right, hold on." She was gone for a while, probably like 30 seconds, but it felt like an afternoon, and came back laughing, going, "All right, I like your pictures. How many words?" And like, I didn't even know what that meant. I didn't write for magazines or anything back. I didn't even know. I said, "I don't know. What do you think?" She said, 500. I said, "Great." To me, that sounded like a lot of words. Probably the amount of words I wrote for the whole first 20 years of my life. And then she said, "But you have to pay the museum." And I was like, "Oh, fuck, this isn't in the budget." And she goes, "I want 12 photographs. And then we both laughed because now I'm in the museum and they could have 100 photographs. And so because this picture, because how do you teach your kid, like, how do you become a photographer? Well, one day in Turkey, you point your camera at the ground and then a big deal curator buys it and she writes in your book. That's how you do it. So follow that line. Okay, next one. As far as I know, this is true. That's my Hasselblad. I have like 5 good pictures with it. It's a problem because I never know what to do with them. It's in one of my books. Took a while to get those heads lined up. Okay, next one. All right, this is in Pamukkale in southern Turkey. And, to me, the peculiar part of taking this picture is why the kid was wearing a scuba mask when you can't see in that water anyway. But I stood in the water, and as he swam up, I took his picture. Next one. Always sit in the passenger seat with the window open on your way to the airport whenever you're traveling. This is on the way to the airport in Rome, and I like this picture. There's another one where you have to pan with it. My professional photographer skills came in handy. Okay, go to the next one. Don't worry, this stuff will be over soon. I don't believe this is actually Anthony. Go to the next one. Ashley's amused by that one. This is a little bit of a lesson. I took this picture, it says in 97. I didn't find it till about 2014 when I was working on a book project. So never throw your shit out because this is one of my favorite pictures. Okay, next. This is a self-portrait because I do know that I'm just a dog in a limo who's very lucky getting wind in my face. I like wind in my face. Next one. What's the story on this one, Ashley? You may speak.
Who gave you that picture?
So I saw this in Union Square in New York City. And
No, I saw this in Union Square. And I said, that's your picture. Go get it.
See,
And you did.
not like she wants credit for it. All right, next one.
Oh,
A little bit about Ashley. It's your turn.
okay. We were talking about before this started how we've done and been to so many talks. I just switched up all my pictures because I'm so tired of talking about the same picture. So let's see if I can come up with something new. I'm from Los Angeles. This is the beach I grew up on. These are my kids, and sometimes I make them go on road trips partially because I think it would be a good photo op. Don't tell them that.
This is on Route 66, right? Oh, it
The
says.
old piece of Route 66 on the way to Vegas. And I grew up hanging out here, and I wasn't a photographer growing up. I had kids, and I was a stay-at-home mom, and was losing my mind and thought I need a thing to do. And I was like your friend that took a million pictures on vacations. And then at some point I decided to, what I thought of as start taking it seriously. So I started going down to Venice because I grew up around these guys, or in some cases, the guy in the air, I grew up around his dad. And it was a nice sort of switch from my life. And I'd go down there and take pictures, and skateboarders love having their picture taken. And then I had always wanted to go to Cuba, and it turns out there's a skate scene there too. So I found this group that is in Miami. They're all skaters, and they bring equipment to the kids in Havana, and everyone hangs out and skates and drinks out of the same bottle of rum, which just seems like impossible now. And it's weirdly so much like Venice when I was growing up. And you can't always travel, so I sometimes go to Target with my son and bribe him into putting the hot dog costume on. He got a very cool Halloween telephone that we still have. You pick it up and it says spooky things. My kids are mostly unintentionally funny. And Sarah is mostly on the phone. And Charlie is sort of unintentionally the funniest. And if you ever want to know which kid is not the child of a photographer, look for the one that smiles for pictures. 3 out of 4 kids in this picture are mine. And we take pictures wherever we go. I mean, a lot of parenting is just hanging out while your kids are growing and learning and doing things and making sure they're safe and making sure they don't fall
That's
out the
Charlie's
window.
hand, right?
That's Charlie's hand.
He wanted
And
to
then-
just touch snow because he's from LA, right?
Well, I mean, he's touched snow. David likes to make it sound like we've never seen snow.
Okay.
But
You've
I don't
never
know,
seen snow.
okay, taking pictures kind of keeps it interesting for me, and it, in a way, I mean, it's doing something else, but it keeps me sort of present and watching what's going on and making sure it doesn't fall out the window. And my favorite story about this picture is when I put it on Facebook and a friend who's a writer said, "Oh my God, did you realize he's doing the exact same thing as the guy in the background? Like he's doing this and the other guy's doing this." And I was like, yes, that's why I took the picture. It's the magic of photography. And I take pictures of my friends. And occasionally I make my sister-in-law make a scene to clear out a bathroom, so I can lie on the floor and take a picture because I thought it should be taken, but that seems creepy when other people are there. I've also been, especially during the pandemic, photographing the city where I grew up. Technically, this is Encino. I did not grow up in Encino, but that's sort of part of my realm. And full of palm trees. David always thinks the palm trees are funny. I don't really notice them, but one day he dared me to take pictures, 25 different pictures of palm trees in a weekend. And I
And
really
you got
can't,
good pictures.
I can't back down from a dare, is what it is. And then everywhere I go, I was reviewing for Center and found the unlikely combination of donuts and coins.
Doesn't seem unlikely.
And this is the classic case of I went to the market hoping to take one picture and Charlie refused, but the picture he insisted that we take was actually funnier than the one I had intended on taking. So the way
Well, go
that
back a second.
the way that we
Maybe
started
you should talk about Charlie. Yeah.
the way that we started Peanut Press is this. We were talking about books. I have a design background and I tend to think of things in terms of books. I feel like photographers either think books or galleries, like it's one or the other mindset. Both is the best. And I had this feeling, I think that a lot of photographers do, like, I want to make my book. What is my book? What is my statement on photography? And David said to me the hard truth, which is you are not ready for your grand statement on photography. But you are doing this thing that's like this small, specific project. And I had no idea what he was talking about. And it was Charth Vader. We had started a Tumblr just so like our family members, his grandparents and everyone could see the funny things Charlie was doing. And David said, this is a complete project. Let's make it a small book. And that's sort of a nice, humble way to present yourself to the photo world with a book. And I think he was really right. And I think that is a philosophy that we've stuck to.
I mean, I was actually right.
Actually, you were right. So he agreed to help me publish the book. And so we came up with a name because it seemed like the thing to do. And we came up with Peanut Press after a week of like sending joke names back and forth. This one stuck. And we decided to make books. So we did the Charth Vader book. It did extremely well. People started
Well, actually,
coming.
we decided to make this book and
Yes.
from scratch because I think that Ashley didn't want to go to a publisher and sort of trust their aesthetic. She wanted to design it herself. And so basically that's what we did. There was no intention of starting a book company. At least I didn't think so when we were doing this.
Well, it seemed
So-
like it should have a name. In the history of all the great photographers that have made up their own publishing company name, we did that. And
Leaf Freelander.
Haywire Press. And we did this book, Charth Vader, and my first book, and it did very well. And so our friends started coming to us saying, how do you do this? And we had so much fun making the book that we wanted to help our friends have the same experience. And we've been publishing books ever since. And these are our roles. This guy's the editor and sequencer. I do the design and production and drink coffee. And we print with Meridian Printing, who, if you have any kind of photo book library, there's a chance you have at least one of their books.
Well, just in this photo alone, you can see Friedlander, you can see Avedon, you can see Ansel Adams, Robert Adams. Maybe that's Kudelka. Um, they print for a lot of people, and what they have there, their setup is there's the commercial side and there's the fine art side. I'm not sure Bob's the owner. I'm not sure Bob calls it that, but when you're printing fine art, they have this attention to detail and desire to make it right, and experience of a couple of decades, and they know what they're doing. I mean, when you're having Avedon, you can't fuck up the book. And Lee Friedlander still goes up there and goes on press. So we started working with them because we wanted the best, and it has really worked out well because they know what they're doing. And
You
so you
really
go in
can
this
go,
library.
you can go to
Tell about the
any,
library, your experience.
well, you can go to any printer, and it doesn't mean that they know how to print photography and that they care what you think about the photography. When if you're having your photographs printed for an exhibition, you're going to be involved in the process. You're going to care how they look, that they're printed in the style that you like. It's an interpretation of your photograph, and Meridian specializes in that. Some people go to China, some people go overseas. For us, they're a little more expensive, but then you also don't have to fly to China or Italy. And they really care. And in between print runs, you sit in their conference room, which is basically just a great photo book library. And we've gotten such great ideas from there. When we were printing Darth Vader, we had settled on one end paper, and I was looking through this Irving Penn book. And I said, "Hey, Bob, can I get this end paper?" And he gets out his little calculator and he says, "Okay," and we switched it right there. Like, you have the benefit of their experience, and they really welcome photographers being there on press and working with them to make the book printed in the way that they want.
Good stuff. And of course, the great thing is, besides being able to look at their books and use their history to pick different things, they've been through everything already.
Yeah.
It's like hiring a photographer with 20 years experience. They've already seen everything that can go wrong, and so therefore nothing phases them. And I hear way too many stories about people getting books back from other printers in China and Korea going, "Oh shit, the font is light. How did this happen?" And now try to deal with that. Here we call Bob and say, "Bob, well, actually it's never happened, but if it did happen, I would say, Bob, what the hell's the deal?" And he'd fix it. So
Well, it
it's that
happens
easy.
in real time because we're there when they're printing the book.
Yeah,
So
we're on press.
we have done a lot of talking about the process of making a book, which I think seems sort of mysterious to some people. And so we are going to present to you the process of making a
Well, there's the
book
book talk part.
as told by our frequently asked questions. So
Michael, there's the book talk part.
here's how, don't say we didn't talk about books. Here's how you make a book as told by frequently asked questions. How do we decide whom to publish? David?
And let me just say, we have Jennifer McClure, Melissa Breyer, Andy Schreiber, and Lori Nix and Kathleen Gerber in this photo, because this is from the new series we just did, which we'll talk about later. But see, we hang. We buy people snacks. We do all the right stuff. Okay, go ahead.
I don't know. So a lot of people ask, how do we decide who we publish? A lot of people want to submit their work. We publish, for one thing, it starts with the work. We have to both love the photography and be able to see it as a book and want to get it out there.
It has to be unanimous, 2 votes.
2 votes. And we want to work with people that we will have fun with, that will get along with, that will trust us to get them the book that they want.
So are we saying fools?
Yes.
No,
fools.
we're not saying fools. Yes, fools. This is 6 months to a year of our lives. I'm not doing this with someone I can't hang out with.
Yes.
I spent many years in the commercial world of photography doing things I didn't want to do. I'm not to do it anymore.
We want to be friends at the end of this too. So I don't know, it's nice. So people are always asking this question because they want to know how to get themselves published. And I always say the answer is get to know us. Like, that'll also tell you if you can work with us.
I can
Ah.
give one example. Grace Weston, who's here, I met in Chicago at the Filter Photo Festival, and we just started talking, and I liked her as a person. We even had lunch in New York. We hung out. So when it came to picking people for this series, like, let's get Grace because she's great.
We love
She's
her
really
work.
good.
She's
It was
easygoing.
a no-brainer.
Yeah.
So that was part of the deal because we really have to deal with people. I mean, just think about it. You're never going to make a lot of money, and you've got to spend time with people. There better be something there besides, like I'm just doing a job. At least for me.
We're just in it for the lunch.
We're in it for the snacks.
Yeah.
Okay. What's that next one?
Speaking of snacks, how do you make a book, David?
Okay, so Richard Braham, you may
sorry.
go back one. You may or may not know Richard Braham's work, but we published his first real major book. He had some other ones from England. And he, of course, came to me with like 500 pictures going, I want to make a book.
He's
And I
a
said,
street photographer
right.
and has pictures from around the world. And he had worked with
Travels the world.
a whole bunch of editors to try and come up with different ways to package up a book of his work, but he has a ton of work. And we looked at it and we were like, this is obvious. You've lived in New York for 10 years. You're about to leave New York. Let's do New York. It's kind of the same idea as Darth Vader. It's like one concise project. Let's put it together, wrap it up with a bow. And then someday, if you want, you can do a London book. You can do a, whatever book. But I think
So when he was
finally,
told that, he only came with 300 pictures.
Yeah.
So we got 300 pictures down to, I have certain editing techniques, and Richard went along with it. And we got it down to, I suspect, in the 60s or maybe 70s. I don't know how many pictures are in the book. 60s sounds right. And so we edited it on that table, actually. And we decided which one they were going to be. And now he's with Joe, who was doing production with us, going
Joe
over
with the
proofs.
fish fame.
Joe with the fish. He doesn't go away. So of course, the snack joke, of course, is I can't stay involved without food in front of me. So we
That's
got
true.
some food. It is true. And especially those, what are those almonds called with the greasy almonds?
Marcona.
I really like those. You know those greasy almonds,
Yes.
some sort of Spanish.
Marcona almonds.
Yeah, Marcona. So as long as I'm fed those, I will continue to edit. So here he is literally doing the proofing. Those proofs came from Meridian, or no, maybe Joe made those in pre-press. So those proofs, we fix them up. Where do you want it, lighter, darker? Well, this color maybe goes this way, this goes, and then we send those off to Meridian, who does a first set of plates. Just as a note, on the bottom, you can see those colors. I'm assuming that's for fabric for the books. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe that's like after the edit.
So really,
So this is an example.
You start with the editing and sequencing.
So I usually want 4 to 5 times the amount of pictures that'll be in the book to look at. I mean, if a book's going to have 40 to 50 pictures, I want to see 150 to 200. And this is the final. This is actually sequencing. Actually, that's Grace Weston on the right and Paris Bisoni on the left. These have been edited now, and now I'm trying to put them in an order that makes sense to me. And the way I do this, I leave them on tables. I don't do it on a computer. I'm like, you hear about those authors who go, I have to do it with a number 2
Like it's in the
pencil on
same
my paper.
It's in the same spot. It's the same table.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, which shows you how daylight is different. But anyway, so this is my final sequencing after I've brought it down from, I don't know how many pictures. So that's you need a lot of. If a book's going to be 50 pictures, I feel like I want to see 200. If that answers that question.
Because the truth is, a lot of photographers are not great editors of their own work. Editing is its own skill. And this is what we talk about when we mean we need a photographer to trust us. David is a great editor. I'm a terrible editor. I don't try and do it. But for a photographer to give someone who's a good editor their work, and for someone else,
my goal is
have
to
the
make them see the
perspective-
pictures what I'm trying to do is edit them down. A lot of people love a picture, and there's 3 variants. So that's easy that you pick one. But what I'm really trying to do is make the photographer's statement. Paris's pictures were about her family and rock stars on the left. I want to make that statement in as few pictures as possible. And I would say to her, if we finish the book at 50 or 60, let's say we're at 50 or 60, and she goes, I really want this in, I want this in, I'll say that picture. The Times is running an article about your book, and you can only use that picture to represent the book. Would you use it? And the photographer will say, well, no, I'd pick something. I said, that doesn't need to be in the book. And I feel strongly about that. If you can't take your picture and represent yourself with it, then that's extraneous. That's not something you need. So that's kind of like one of the things I do with photographers. And they don't think in those terms, and that's fine. I mean, I'm a photographer. I know how I think, and they generally think the same. Most people have that same thing, like, oh, I hate to see it go. But then when they see the final product, rarely is anybody going, can we just add one? And then if they really push it, maybe I say yes.
David
that's
will
that.
accept an argument for a photo, but generally, usually the conversation goes like this. I want this one in the book. Okay, does that make the book better? Well, no. And then the conversation's over.
I also tell people we've all looked at books and didn't finish looking at the pictures because even good photographers, by the end, you go like, all right, this is the last 20. I don't want to make a book that people don't finish the pictures. So I rather put less in it. And I have friends who, Jason Eskenazi owns Red Hook. He wants to have lots of pictures in his books. We basically disagree about how many pictures should be in a book. And, maybe we're both right, maybe we're not. But for me, I want somebody to not stop and to keep going. So that's the way I kind of look at it. And Ashley, one of the good things is Ashley and I generally leave each other to our tasks. Like I edit in sequence and she designs it and we contribute back and forth a little bit, but it's almost like we do our own thing. And at the end, that's when we get together and go, does this all make sense? So it's kind of good. We each have our own job. And
yeah, we
am I
bounce it
wrong?
off each
Do we?
other. But we
Yeah.
agree on things like how many pictures do you need for a book? Neither of us wants to look at those books that we've all bought, like the giant Gary Winogrand book. Like it's super heavy. It's at the bottom of my book pile. And I'll never get through the whole thing. Like I'm not really going to read it. I'll open it up and flip through it a little bit. We want books that are digestible, that that from the physical size, like you're going to sit there in a chair and hold it. Like you don't need to put it on a table and turn the pages. Like it doesn't need to be giant and that it doesn't need to have a million pictures. It's like telling a story. Like it can't be too long. It can't be too short. And I think that was the case with Darth Vader. When we made that, I think we agreed about 28 to 30 pictures was right. Otherwise, it starts seeming like a trick, like shtick. And I think it ended up the perfect amount. I think 100 of those pictures, they become meaningless. And then people get overwhelmed with the options when you're designing a book. There's a lot of ways you can go. And there's a couple things going on when you're creating a book. So editing and sequencing, design, proofing, and all of these things are intertwined and all of these things are happening at the same time. So David is editing, he's sort of carving out a story out of these pictures. But the design of the book has to tell the story too. It has to complement the story. A lot of the design gets done like this.
This
That's
is
all.
clearly her just wanting her dog in a picture so she can write
I
him
know,
off.
he's such a good boy.
Is that a thing? Can you write off a dog?
I don't know. So the choices we make in terms of the foil stamping color, or if you're going to have a picture on the front, or if it's going to be printed, if it's going to be a linen bound or a hardback or a softback or whatever, all these choices come down to what helps tell the story and set the mood of the book.
Here's a great example of how foil stamping, you can say, oh, I've always liked this, or I've always liked that. This is 4 different stamps, or 5 maybe.
So what they do is
And you're going,
they make kind of a dummy of what the cover will look like, and they create the stamps. And actually, you can see this was my first book, and I think the stamp on the spine is upside down right there. Can you see that with the peanut press? But so they make these dummies of just the cover. This isn't a fully bound book. This is just a cover. So you can see the linen, you can see the stamp, and it's, you make these design decisions in a vacuum, and it's always
especially
different.
when you're debossing, which means
Yeah.
imprinting into it, you don't know how it's going to react till you see the light hit it. So you literally have to see what is clear, what is silver, what is white, what do they look like? Because I mean, they at Meridian, they go, well, we have to do it. You got to see what the fabric does when you hit it with that. So this is part of the process. You're doing this.
It's always worth the money to do a mock-up. I mean, this isn't expensive in the scheme of things in making a book, but being able to hold it in your hands and see it in the light is always worth it. This one, I think I went into thinking I would do either the upper right, the like more bright silver Darth Vader, or the one next to it that's just like debossed with no foil. And I think I ended up going with the clear
You
because
did, because
it
it
looked
gave
like
it
the
a
debossed,
sheen.
but it had a little, it
Yeah.
caught your eye a little more. So it's always,
Yeah.
it's interesting and it's fun.
And by the way, we've done that other fabric and it didn't work. So it's like, wow, it worked
Yes.
on Charth, but it doesn't look right on this. So you just never know. Okay, so how do you work with people? Oh, wait, wrong one.
Yeah. So at the same time as you're doing editing and sequencing, at the
That's right,
same
my
time you're
floor layout.
doing, at the same time as you're doing design, you're also proofing these images so they print correctly on an offset press or on a digital press, whatever you're printing on. And people, we all have very specific opinions about how we like our photographs printed, and all printers print
So that,
differently.
by the way, that's Rainey Silvestri. He's in Miami. I was in New York and she was in LA. And we're actually doing this. I mean, this is why Zoom is great. Because when there's no Zoom, how do you people have to come into New York or LA and we have to do it there. So this worked out really well for this series we just did.
Yeah, so the printer Meridian sent proofs to Rainey, proofs to me, proofs to David, and we sat on Zoom and corrected them. He'd say, I want this a little brighter. I want a little more contrast here. We went back and forth about them. And what you do is you write on these big proof sheets. Here's an example, a little more contrast in the upper left. We decided to get rid of that one on the upper right. You can make really specific changes, and then the printer will, in the prepress, change them and send you a new proof. And sometime in the ways that these are all intertwined, this is an example from Rami Narula's book, Platform 10.
These are photographs in Bangkok of a specific train station.
One
And
specific
I
train
think what
station,
none
one
of us
specific
realized
time
was
of
the
day.
color. We
So
also didn't realize this color palette.
So I thought this book was going to be black because they're very moody. They're dark. They've got these like beautiful highlights and some deep colors, but they're dark. They're shadowy. So I was thinking black. And then we got this proof sheet and I thought, oh my gosh, they're all a little blue for some reason. And that totally changed the look of the book. So it ended up being blue with gold foil, which was, I think, gorgeous.
It looks great.
So we have
Ah.
opinions and other people have different opinions, and these are our opinions.
Ours are
Oh.
right.
A lot of people print overseas and don't go. We don't care where you print. We think it's super important to go on press. And I don't know, I can't think of, David, anyone who's gone on press who's ended up unhappy with the final result? I know people who didn't go on press who have ended up unhappy. So you're
You
kind
mean
of
for
hedging
books
your
we
bet.
made?
No. Just
Oh, in
everyone you know
general?
who's made a book. Yeah.
You should be on
Besides
press.
the fact, it's fun. We take the train up to Rhode Island, and sometimes the train breaks down near a nuclear power plant, and everyone has drinks for a couple hours. So it's all totally worth it.
Richard looks like he had a few drinks.
I think he's ahead of me at this point.
And this is what happens when you arrive in the first morning when they've set up the set of proofs and you have a near heart attack that you can't believe you see your book being created.
Because after
That's
months
Paris.
of proofing and design and everything, it's such a huge expense. It's such a huge time commitment. It's so much work. And you start doubting yourself, you start doubting the project, and then you get there and your first sheet is printed out. That's a sheet right there. And I remember having this exact same reaction. Like, it is unbelievable to see your pictures printed out like that. So then the process goes, they print out a sheet and you bring in the proofs. You look at the proofs that you spent a lot of time on and you look at the sheet, and there are changes you can make on the press. So we have Joe here who did our pre-press for this book, and he's going to talk to the press guy about how to get what's printing, the printing, when you're doing offset, printing changes because of the humidity in the room, because of the temperature, because of the way they mixed up the ink that morning. It's always variable. So they do their best shot. And at Meridian, they're super
And by the way, one
experienced
of
in
the
this.
great things about Meridian, they're so close that you almost could run the book the minute you get
Yes.
there. I mean, they're so advanced. I've seen so many proofs from other places. Because remember, I spent years in advertising. It's rare that the first thing you go, oh, good. Like that just doesn't work that way. I mean, So anyway, that's one of the great advantages of using a place at that level. And by the way, I'm not pitching them because it's irrelevant. But it's just that when you work with somebody who has the tools and the skills, you
This
try
is
to
why
remove as
we
many
work with
weak
them.
links from the chain as you can. And Meridian for us really works. And there's other great printers, but I'm just saying that's one of the advantages of. So go ahead. And they're a green company. They use solar power. That's Bob's hand who owns Meridian.
So there are proofs that you sign off on. They do digital proofs. Once the proofing process is over, once you've gone back and forth with your images, they've sent them to you, you've corrected them, they send them back, they sent you a corrected version, you go back. Finally, after all the back and forth, they send you a final proof that you sign off on. And when you're there printing, you can compare what's coming off the press to this final proof. It's a digital proof, so it's never going to be exactly the same. It doesn't print the same, the ink doesn't lay on the paper the same way, but you can get close.
Basically, what this thing that you sign is saying, I agree this looks good, I will pay you.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, that's what it is.
Yeah.
This is you saying, I'm good to go, I signed it, let's move on. So.
Yeah. And it's a handy reference.
Yeah, I still have it. It's a cool collectible. That's
at the end, you sign off on that one sheet that's like a couple of pages of your book, and then you go on to the next one, and you do that process around and around and around all day long with snacks
and that's George, who's the head pressman. See how much fun he's having working with us?
He's been working there since he was 16?
He was like started at
Huh.
18 with some crappy job, and now he's like the top guy in the press, and he's really good.
He's the best.
Yeah. Grace Weston.
So we've worked with people all around the world. It was a little more complicated to set up meetings with Rami Narula, who lives in Thailand, because of timing, but we did it. And this is how, I think we've all learned that Zoom.
By the way, that's not Rami Narula, just so you know.
No, that's not Rami. That's Grace Weston, who's here. This is how we do it. And if you can't come on press, which you should, we will deep fake you. So you have some social media.
And you can see how good we are at Photoshop.
Bram and Rami. Bram and Rami. We just call them
They
Brammy
became
now,
Brammy.
because we printed
They
their
were
book
one
at the
after
same
another.
time.
So this is Victoria, Will.
With her book Born Back. And the question we get a lot is, how many books should I print? David, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I mean, here's how I look at it. Because I have limited abilities, I always put myself in the place and decide what would I want. So I look at it like this. I have a story about my first book that I'm not going to get into. But at the end of the day, when your books are done being sold and you've made a few bucks, I want to have 200, 250 books in a box in my house or in multiple boxes. And people go, no, that's horrible. What are you going to do with them? Well, on my first book came out, I was like 38, 40. So that means I had 30 more years of giving books away, because I never knew I'd have a second book. So you want enough stuff that if you give away a book once or twice every month for the next 30 years, you have enough books. And then you're going to always have a book signing if you have a show. So what you want to have is a lot of extras. So what we try to tell people is anywhere from 750 to 1,000 is probably great for a book. You hope to sell 300 to 600 and keep the rest.
Unless you have
But
something
for someone
that's-
like Victoria's a commercial photographer, has her personal work. She printed a lot more because she uses them as a leave behind, as gifts for her clients. And it had a real good purpose for that. So if she gave away 500 to clients, it comes back. So, if you're a fine art photographer versus a commercial photographer versus a combination of both, there's different reasons to do it. But too many photographers sell all their books and end up with like 6 going, shit, now what? And you don't want to be in that spot.
We also printed more of hers because her book really has a sort of crossover appeal. It's tintype portraits of celebrities. And it was a great gift book. It sold really well for the holidays, to give as gifts. We had orders of like 10 books, people were just giving
One of the
me
reasons was because she took the last photograph of
Philip
Philip
Seymour
Seymour
Hoffman.
Hoffman, the tintype, if you ever seen of him, that was on the cover of Esquire. So we had this kind of momentum from a lot of that. So that was part of, you got to
So-
predict this stuff because it's a big investment,
So when people ask how many books should we print, my question is always, why? Well, who's buying your book? Like, is this just a project for photographers? Like, there's some projects that just other photographers will be interested in that are not a mass market kind of thing. That's a different marketing strategy. It's not good or bad. It's just a different strategy. Yeah.
So Victoria's like a crossover. So she's one
Yeah.
example. Go on to the next one, let's say.
All right.
Then
you
what
make
do
a
you
book.
do?
You have a party, you have a show, you have a book signing, you do talks. And the thing that I didn't realize that people are always surprised by is what comes from making a book is not just a book. People buy your book and then you get a random call that they want to buy 3 prints from the book. You
If
get
you
a
look at the
talk.
top right photograph,
Yeah.
the top right photograph is my show from when No Plan B came out. All those prints on the wall are there for them to see prints in real life. So you get this crossover, like a bunch of lawyers wanted pictures from New York. I sold a lot of prints. I'm not saying I didn't expect to sell 1 or 2, but you just have no way of knowing that. And also there's I think there's a sort of a credibility or validation in a book coming out, and people will go like, oh, I have the book, I want to get a print too. So there's these things that sort of come with that, which leads into a little bit of how we did our new project. But yeah, but it's mostly about the fun because you're relieved, you're exhausted.
But
It's like
for your-
months and months of working.
Yeah, and you're really sick of your work at the end of it. But so much comes from this. Because of Charth Vader, I was asked to do a talk. At that talk, someone came up and offered me a solo show. Like, things happen from other things. So it can be a great way to tie up a project in your head. Like, after we published Charth Vader, I didn't have to carry that helmet around everywhere that I went. It sort of mentally helps you move on to the next thing, or, some projects go on forever. And what we are
So now the
doing
latest project.
right now is this series of books called Peanut Portfolios. So when you publish a book, historically, what we've done is we print, let's say 750 or 1500. 100 of those will be sold as a limited edition that come with a print. And David and I both love collecting books, and we love collecting prints. And what we thought was, I wonder if we can just make the limited editions. So 100 of each book, each with a print. And we talked to a bunch of photographers that we thought were cool, that we liked their work and we wanted to work with. And this is how the process
So on
went.
our left is Melissa Breyer, and that's me going over the proofs with her, actually. And that's Eric next to her, who was doing it's her boyfriend,
Eric
but he also
Kogan.
he printed for her. In the middle is Sasha Lecca, who's this great music photographer, who's actually an editor at Rolling Stone. On the right is Andy Schreiber, and she was actually making all these prints to proof her book with. She was going to send these prints to Meridian and say match all these, because hers are self-portraits and she wanted her skin to not look like she was jaundiced. So she made all these prints for them to match.
One thing we found out in making these books is that people who photograph themselves care a lot more about color correction, because you look at a picture and you think, I'm not that color, like I'm not that orange.
Jen, turn on your mic a second. So we made Jen's book and they're self-portraits. Jen, were you looking at your skin color all the time?
Part of the time, yeah. I was mostly looking like for wrinkles and stuff like that and trying
Okay,
to.
but it still becomes that critical analysis. Yes.
It's very critical analysis. But yes, the color. And there was one I think we went back and forth on for quite a while.
Yeah.
You went magenta to yellow too much. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but it's important, the skin tone. I didn't make proof prints for them by any means.
Well, maybe that says more about Andy's personality than yours.
Yes, I'm very impressed that she did
But
that.
this is actually helpful and kind of skips a proofing step if you as a photographer.
Yeah, it made it much easier.
for photographers who print their own work or have prints, to be able to send, I think for most people, we sent at least 1 or 2 prints to Meridian
Yeah, at
for
least,
them
yeah,
to
yeah.
match.
I
to
know
get an
Grace
idea.
Weston, we did a couple because because they're not real life, that you got to know what the color she's looking for is. It's not real skin, real tones, real lighting. So you really have to come close to what she's trying
Yeah.
to get. But I think it worked really well.
So we made this series of books.
9 books.
9 books, 9 photographers. They're all a book and a print.
And we released them right before Christmas,
It was a fun
which is
design
the only way to
challenge.
sell a mass amount of books like this.
Yes. It was a fun design challenge to figure out how to make 9 books that sort of similar books that look kind of the same, but worked for different people's works. They're all different formats, different layouts, different sizes. The photographs are, but the books are all the same. And these labels on the front are signed and numbered by the photographer, as are the prints.
Prints is signed and numbered.
And we are
So I think it's a
working
really
on.
cool way to buy a book. I would buy it. I mean, let's be honest, and this is actually the truth. The only books we make are books we would buy. And like a lot of these photographers, we said, if we make a book with them, we get a print. That's the truth. So it's
That's the
like,
truth.
all right, we invest a lot of time and money, but we get a print. So that was kind of the deal. We're still children when it comes to this stuff.
And we're working on planning a second series. And
Second series.
soon, hopefully, we'll announce who's in it, but not today.
Well, we don't have commitments yet. Is that you telling me not to say any names?
Correct.
Yes. Okay, what's the last picture?
Any questions?
Oh, any questions? Here you go, Mike. Now they can ask questions.
Okay, any questions?
Can I stop the share so I can see people's faces?
Sure.
Okay.
Somebody's got to have a question.
How do you fund books?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yes,
That is the best question.
I'll let David
You
answer that.
handle
I
that,
noticed
Ashley.
you dodged that, so I want that.
Well, it wasn't a dodge. It's everything is different. But Ashley, all right, you want to hear a non-dodge, a direct answer?
Yes.
The 9-book series we just made, we pay
No.
for it.
Okay. How
Okay, I
about
can tell you
for
that one, though.
individual photographers?
The what? Individual photographers?
Do
Well,
you-
it depends on the person.
Do you ask for funding from the photographer?
Okay, every project has been different. Sadly, we are not able to fund every book that we publish. It just doesn't work like that. Printing is so expensive. It doesn't work like that. There's the cost of the actual printing. There's our time and our work. There's pre-press. There's proofing. All these things are expenses. And we've had different financial relationships with different photographers. So we don't really
Everyone has
want
been
to,
different.
we don't really want to talk about people's specific finances.
Right.
Other than to say
We've been
they're
very generous compared to other publishers because I've seen their contracts. I'll say
They're-
that.
yeah, there are books we've contributed to because we believed in the book so much.
I don't think there's any books we didn't.
Yes, and these portfolios we were able to pay for the books and not ask anything of the photographers financially.
And we paid the
Which-
photographers.
Really, as photographers, felt good. Our goal is to, well, you know, there are publishers that we feel like ask a lot of money of photographers and don't give a lot. So if you're negotiating with a publisher, we really hope that you know what you're getting and that you're getting enough for your money, because we've seen people pay a lot of cash for books and not get any books in return, which is how you recoup some of that. And it's sort of sad to see people being taken advantage of, but we're also photographers, so we're on both sides of this. I think we have a little more sympathy for people signing up with publishers.
Can I ask
Comments,
a
David?
question?
That's all you get. Is that a good enough answer?
It's okay.
Could I ask
All
a
right.
question?
Sorry.
Hello, everybody. Thank you. Great presentation. Quick
Thank
question.
you.
Thanks.
Are you helping after you have the books to get them into bookstores? Are you have any connection or any way to
Okay.
funnel them in?
I can answer that.
published the book and I ended up with a whole garage full of books, and then all of a sudden, all right, now I have to do the work and run around, and I worked it out, but it took a while. especially
Yeah.
if you have no
So
idea.
here's
what-
how we do it, basically.
Thank you.
We would rather sell everything on our own, so we don't have to give any money to bookstores. And every book so far, everybody was happy. And did they go in bookstores? We've had books in bookstores. Yes, we've done that. We don't do a lot of that.
Okay, so here's the finances of how that works out. Using a distributor takes a big chunk of the profit out of a book. There's not a lot of profit in books. This isn't a way to make money. This isn't a get rich quick scheme. You're doing it because it's time and because you can financially afford to do it. We don't want to take anyone's last dollar ever. We don't want anyone to go into debt to do this. So for us, we make the most money if we distribute the books. Now, David is sick of me saying this, but during COVID, it's been really horrible because I'm our only shipper and it's horrible. I'm drowning. But it really pays off. And generally during non-COVID times, we have people come in to help. We have bookstores that we've worked with. We've worked with Photo Eye, who's great, who has their own audience. So they, we have our audience of people that buy from us. They have their own audience. But when you're working with a bookstore, you're taking a cut off that profit. So it's kind of the balance of how many do you
There's
want to
another
sell on your
factor.
own
We give the
versus how many.
photographers a lot of books, a lot. And they can do what they want with them, but we're not like, give us 40 grand and here's 300 books or 200 books. We're nothing like that model. But our reality is we sell books and you get a piece at a certain time of the books. And that's pretty much it. And we managed to sell our books without a lot of help. So it's been good so far. We really haven't had an issue. For example, Victoria Will got so much press that they were like flying off she got on TV and we sold a bunch. Well, she didn't. Someone else did. But the books just go. I mean, if you could sell 100 books in a day, remember, we're only trying to sell 400, maybe 500 books. If we sell 800 or 900, it's great. But 400 or 500, we're not losing money.
But see,
Even less sometimes.
we do small batch,
Mhm.
books. We're not doing runs of 5,000. That's a different distribution problem.
Yeah.
Challenge. So for us, we're able to sell what we're making because we're doing these small batch books. And someone else asked about distribution. A lot of what we do is trying to find publicity for these books. And this is a good thing to be thinking about as you're designing the book is getting some publicity set up ahead of time. So when you're ready with the book, you send them the book and you find people who are right about it. What's great for Victoria Will was that her work had a really mainstream appeal, and she has a lot of contacts in the press because of her background. And her dad even got her book on Morning Joe. And they, in my obsession of what spurs book sales, Jason Momoa posting our book on Instagram with his 1 million followers
5 million.
did not sell a lot of books. What sold the books was Morning Joe holding up the book, saying the wrong place to buy it and putting it down and going to commercial. And that made a crazy spike in book sales. So I don't know. I think it's sort of fascinating to
It
look
also
at
works like
what
Richard Brand
sells
is
books.
part of a collective called Up Photographers, and he sold a shitload of books because of that. And Rami sold a whole bunch of books because in Southeast Asia, he's kind of a well-known guy. So street photographers are buying them all over the place. I mean, each book has its own way of selling, but it generally comes from either the following of the photographer and the following of ours, or good press. Those are the two things that sell books.
And in that way, it's a great way to expand your audience. I mean, having a book is such a good tool for your career as a photographer, because to sell it, you need to expand your audience. And it's helpful to have some amount of audience going into it. But this can really help. Having friends post about your book. I just posted about a friend's book that has a pretty broad appeal, and got a couple sales.
Oh, we
from
left
people who
something out
don't
too.
even know
Book
her.
signings. Book signings. You
signings are
sell a
great.
lot. Yeah, I would have a book signing at a gallery or something like that. I mean, the Leica Gallery in Soho sold I don't know, 150 of my books more. Ashley just sold a whole bunch of books down in Miami, Leica. I mean, and those guys buy them direct. I mean, I shouldn't even talk about that, but yes, it's nice when the bookstore buys them directly from you. So you don't have to like wait on it. We won't do that anymore. But yeah. So that's it. I mean, there's no one answer, but the answer comes down to press and audience if you have a following.
Have you ever had a situation? Hi, it's Daryl Ann. How are you
Hi,
guys?
Daryl Ann.
Hey,
So I'm in the shadows, sorry. Have you guys ever had a situation where, say, for example, you mentioned Victoria and so forth, where, you print a certain run and then, wonderful surprise, they sell out or they do really well. And then do you do another printing, or how does that,
no.
how would that work?
Well, okay, that's exactly what happened with our first book, my book,
Charth.
Charth Vader,
Charth Vader.
which got a crazy amount of press and sold out in like 2 weeks or something. It was nuts, like absolutely unexpected and nuts.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, thank you. And
Well, it was also a pain in the ass because we didn't have enough put away, but yes.
yes, they're still limited editions, but the trade edition is sold out. And people have asked me, do you want to reprint it? I mean, that's entirely up to the photographer. And I think that's a sort of strategic decision for your career.
Well, I can just say we've never had this conversation, but I wouldn't make a second press. I mean, I would rather have a book that you got to buy on eBay for $300 than make another run and sit at home after 80 sold and have 500 sitting there. So the answer would always be no from me.
But if you have a more mainstream book,
Mm-hmm.
sells in huge numbers.
Well, we don't make those.
I know, but I'm saying we're talking about books. I can think of a couple of friends of ours who have sold out and made a second edition because it's a pretty mainstream book about a mainstream, great pictures, but mainstream topic that people like. So if you have the ability to sell a significant number in addition to what you just printed, sure, do a second edition. For me, in a way, I feel like I get more, I don't know if it's credibility, but it sounds cooler to say it's sold out than to have a bunch more Charth Vaders. Like, I'm not going to get additional publicity out of it. It's
I
not
think
going
there's a little bit.
it's not
That's
going to do
true.
anything else for my career. I'm not going to make a significant amount of money on it. So for me, I'm just like, that is to bed. Maybe, maybe in 10 years I'll reprint it. I don't.
The analogy I would use is going grocery shopping when you're really hungry, and then going grocery shopping after you ate a big meal. After
Yeah.
the book is done, it's done. I don't want to do anymore. I'm almost annoyed, to be perfectly honest. My first book, I found a bunch of them, and I put on Facebook, hey, I got some of these for sale. Does anybody want them? And I went out for the day and came back and I'd sold 30 that afternoon. I was really pissed because now I have to pack up 30 fucking books and ship them around the world. And I'm not saying I'm not grateful. I totally love it. I even charge too much so that I thought I'd get less people.
Let's just say David is not in charge of distribution.
Yeah. Well, the reason
No, I had to mail those.
I know.
Theo did them. I had to hire my son to box them. But the point is, when it's done, it's done. That's how I look at it.
Well,
I mean, I sold them. I'm glad people liked it, but yeah.
The reason I was asking is also because sometimes you could do a book, things change, times change, and sometimes something becomes either more relevant or all of a sudden very relevant. So I could see
Absolutely.
a situation
Absolutely.
where, suddenly something, so I just wondered if maybe that hasn't come up for you guys yet, but I just wondered if,
It's only been 5 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
It
think
hasn't come up. It really has been a short time. It's not like 20 years down the road reprinting another book. Yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah, I think that's a matter of times changing and time going by and being sort of necessary to look at work again, like to bring that, like, why are you bringing this up again? If it matters, like, yeah, that's a really compelling reason to do.
I also love a
second
new
edition.
project. I like the announcement. I like the excitement of the new project. If I had to redo a book, it just seemed like, oh wait, where's the excitement part? This is just more work. Like, that doesn't seem enticing to me.
No, but I
And
do
like
see.
Ashley said, she's not going to get anything out of it because there's really no money. So like,
Yes, but
and
I
if you're
could
not really that
see.
motivated.
I could see 10, 15, 20 years bringing that back. Look at this, the first book I ever did, reprinting it.
Okay,
like,
you do
by-
that because I'll be dead in 20 years, so
by
that'll
the-
work out.
Sorry, that's not funny.
True.
Not if I kill you first.
Oh, that joke.
So yes,
I have a question. First of all, as being one of the artists in the portfolios, I just want to say what a great experience it was. It was so not just a good experience, it was fun. And this is the first time I've done a book that I didn't self-publish, and it was, you know, I couldn't have hoped for anything better. My question, though,
we paid her to say
Ooh,
that,
very nice.
but
yeah,
thank you, Grace.
no, it's true. It was so much fun.
Who is this? No, go
This
ahead.
is Grace.
I'm joking. I'm joking.
So the question I have though is, I would like to, you know, the bunch of books I have, I would like to take some of those and get those placed in museums. And I wonder if you have any advice of how that's done. I don't have personal relationships with all these different museums all over the country. I have a relationship here with the Portland Museum, but, and I'm in there already. But yeah, so I wonder if you have advice about this.
Well, you do know you're in the Eamon Carter now, right?
Oh, that's right. That's
Eamon
right.
Carter acquired a complete set.
That's wonderful. Yes.
That makes you happy,
So
doesn't it?
there is a thing about submitting to a lot of collections and institutions, which is that if you send them the book, it's in the collection. Do we not talk about that? Are we not supposed to say that?
Yeah.
Dave?
So MoMA, this all came up because I saw a documentary about this artist. They're having like a 50-year retrospective at MoMA. He's kind of a well-known artist, but he wasn't in MoMA. So his friends who are well-known, like Pollock, and I think it was like those kind of guys, Pollock or like Rauschenberg or something, said, "Oh, there's a policy here about ephemera. If you draw on a postcard and mail it to MoMA, they have to archive it. And you'll be in the collection, then you can be in the show," because the curator wanted to put him in the show. So I think a lot of museums, certainly books at libraries and museums, you can donate them. You just need to know who the head curators. Selling them is different than donating. Selling them is a different challenge. I've done both. So I know it's a different challenge, but if you just want to be in the collection for like your resume or whatever, you can actually write to the museums and send them the book. And most of them aren't allowed to throw them out. So that's good.
So in most cases, you can send them the book. You find out who the right person is.
Right.
That's
And
key.
send them a book with a letter saying, you know, I've published this book. You know, it's my pleasure to donate it to your collection, blah, blah, blah. And in most cases, you get a really nice response. I've never gotten
You
a
do. You
bad
get like an
response.
email or a letter saying thank you.
It's more vague and not as hard as it seems.
Do you know if you can do that with prints too, by any chance? That may
You
be
can
different.
always donate a print, but here's the problem with a print, from my experience. And my career started off in the art world part, not the commercial part, with 3 galleries: Bonnie Ben Ruby Gallery in New York, Stephen Dater in Chicago, and John Cleary in Houston. And through them, I learned that a lot of times you'll go to the board of the museum and they'll buy a print and then you give them 2 as a gift. And then they're getting 3 of your prints for the price of 1 or some variant like that. But generally, from what I remember, they have to vote on print acquisitions.
I think
It's not
that's,
like you just mail a print.
yeah.
And
That's
also, my information is from the 90s, but I suspect it's still accurate because, you know, they have even more stuff now. But
One
yeah,
thing
so
that I've
that's how
found
I-
is that donating your book can kind of open the door to a conversation with the curator or person in charge of acquisitions.
yes.
So that might be.
I mean, you're
good way
sending them a
to do it.
catalog. If they like it, you could say, I can make a print available too. Skinning the cat theory. There's a whole bunch of ways to do it.
And as always, like David said, it's a different. There's donating and there's acquisitions. Like those are 2 different things. A
Yes.
lot of places are happy for a donation and don't always have the funding for acquisitions, or acquisitions are controlled by a board, or there's a specific, bent that there's some category that they're looking for acquisitions that their money is slated for. So there are all these factors. But I think a book is kind of like it doesn't cost you a lot to send,
Right.
and
Media mail.
can start a
Use media
conversation.
mail.
Thanks.
So that's our answer. Might be lies. I don't even know. It's hard to remember.
We're just
the old-
making it up.
Yeah.
I have a question. I'd like to know what your strategy has been for promoting your books during this time of COVID when we could not have face-to-face openings and book
Okay, here's
signing.
here's the sort of horrible truth.
Hi,
This
Carol.
is the actual horrible truth. What?
I was just saying hi to
Who
Carol
is it? Hi, Carol. Do we know each other?
Maybe.
on
Oh,
Facebook.
we do now. Hi, Carol. All right, here's the horrible truth. And I don't even know how much of this is real or not, but to me, most people buy books online these days. So, A, they're already buying them without seeing them. You know, I mean, it's just part of the reality of buying books now. There's no photographer's place in, Soho. I mean, Barnes and Noble has big, shitty, mass-produced, Norton kind of books. Not that that's bad, but I'm just saying you're not going to get like sort of small publishers, intimate stuff. So most stuff is bought online. So that's not even a weird anomaly during, the COVID thing to buy a book online. That being said, we have never sold more books quicker. The most expensive books we've ever put out is this series. We've never sold more and faster than during COVID, and I don't really know why.
Well,
But it was so
these
overwhelming.
these books, because they come with a print, are 125, and which is, as someone complained, expensive for a book, although ironically very not expensive for print. And we think that they're great gifts, holiday gifts. And
But I
they're
think that my point I'm making is it seems like during COVID, sales didn't change that much, which is
sales
weird.
went up because everyone's home.
Yeah, they did go up.
So we, as you all probably know, David and I do a lot of social media marketing, and it's just about getting it out there. And if you think you've posted about your book already, not
Do it again.
everyone saw it. Like, it's
Yeah.
amazing how you think you're saying the same thing over and over again. Maybe you guys are sitting there going, you are, but
What the fuck?
it's, you
Every
post
time
something.
Grace Weston and Jennifer McClure post about their books, we sell them. Every single time they post them.
Susan, I think you need to go on mute. There you go. Yeah.
And that's
So
just a fact.
for
Every time they
us,
post, we
social
sell.
media has been the number one for sure.
Maybe because people are locked up looking at social media. I don't know the answer, but let's put it this way. There was a time in November when these books were coming out where we thought, did we make a big mistake? Like, is this going to be horrible?
They were
And then it
delayed
wasn't.
because the printer had to be closed because of COVID.
There's a lot of investment in this and
But
time and a whole.
here's another thing. The Zoom thing that we were talking about at the, before we started this, has given everyone access to each other in a much bigger way. So I had, for my second book, I had a signing schedule at Leica LA, which I was very excited about. In-person signings, talk and signing. And, maybe we would have had a really big turnout, like 50 people or something like that. But that got canceled because of COVID. And so instead, we did an online talk. And this was at the beginning of COVID, before everyone had gone to 1,000 talks. And there were, how many people were there, David?
You talking about Leica?
Yeah.
They had like
1,000?
800 people and sold a shitload of books.
Yes. Sold so many books, I could not believe it from one talk. So in that way, like the thing I keep saying, like we all have more access to each other. You have more access to your audience. People have more access to finding photographers that they're interested in. More ways to, I couldn't do a talk in South Carolina and a talk in Carmel in the same week, except for now I can,
Now you did.
Now I did.
Thank
Anybody?
you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I have two questions in the chat that I'm going to tie together. They're pretty related. Philip and Mark, how do you select the artists that you work with? And is there a preferable way to make a submission? A mock-up image
Ashley can
attachments
take that one.
Well, I think we covered that a little bit in terms of who
Yeah.
we work with and who we publish. We really like to work with people that we have some understanding of their personalities, someone who's willing to put their trust in our skills, and someone who can afford to do this project. Again, we don't want anyone to go bankrupt for the sake of a photo book, not worth it. And then
Leave it open, darling, because that's a cool air, thank you.
what was the other thing? Submissions. We have a submission link on our website. Honestly, we've never published anything from the submissions. the best way is to get to know us on Facebook, on Instagram. You know, be polite, be
What
a
are we,
decent
East Coast,
person.
West Coast elitists?
Yes,
You gotta get to know us.
you got to get to know us, because so you know if you want to work with us, so we know if we want to work with you. And then on top of that, like the photography has to interest both of us, and that is totally subjective. Like that's just what we
I
happen
might
to be
be
interested
accurate
in.
here, but this may be accurate, I'm not sure, but everybody we've published, we've met through either a photo festival or through social media. Try to think of someone we haven't.
Yeah.
I mean,
did
I
miss
can't think of someone who I haven't met in that context.
Yeah.
So that's
Did
interesting.
you show your social media link earlier?
Oh yeah, it's peanutpressbooks.com. That's our
What
website.
does that mean?
Very good.
And from there you can
just
find
froze.
our Instagram. David and I are both on Facebook and pretty active there. We're pretty
you said
easy
that
to
was-
find.
You said that was Peanut Press Publishing, is that right?
Peanutpressbooks.com.
Peanutpressbooks.com.
I wanted to ask quickly about your title or the name of the press. Peanut
Press.
Press. Was that someone's favorite snack, or is
Okay,
it?
we're gonna lie because we can't say what the name comes from.
I was going to say
No.
yeah.
It's what I used to call Charlie, and that's who the first book. My youngest son, who was the first book, was
Darth
Darth Vader, and the reason we formed this. And you know, I used to call him
He was a
Peanut.
peanut.
I think he would
Right.
kill me now
Because
if I did,
it's-
because he's 12 and angsty. But
It's also like a metaphor for a small press, big impact. You know, that kind of
There
thing.
you go. No, that was really it.
that was it.
That was
That
what.
Well, I have just a couple others, and you mentioned editing techniques. You described one of laying them out on the table, but do you have any other editing advice, self-editing? I mean, what makes you a good editor versus a photographer trying to edit their own work?
Can I,
Here's what I would
David-
say to that.
David, before you go into your answer, can I just say I personally, as a photographer, don't think people should edit their own work. David is the only person I've seen that can edit his own work. I think photographers are notoriously terrible editors of their own work. Okay, go on.
I'm good with that answer.
Well, that doesn't tell me anything, though.
I mean, here's
makes
what
you
I would
good
say.
at it?
You're asking how to edit your own work. I mean, my first answer is find somebody who knows how to edit. How does somebody know how to edit? I don't know. I think you know you're a decent editor when every time you edit every time you edit for someone, afterwards they go, "That's great. I never saw it that way," or I never thought of it like that. The more of those you get, the more you start to have this sort of, I guess I know what I'm doing, but the process for me doesn't feel like I know what I'm doing. It feels like that looks right or that looks right. And it's exactly the same with my own work. But I think that's more about my personality. I have no, but in all the years I've been doing this, all my friends, everybody, I've maybe met one or two people who can edit their own work. I can't tell you how many photographers I know, thousands. Most people can't because it's personal. And they also, I think there's a kind of thing where they care too much that people know what they're doing. And I'm not saying I don't care, but I think I can say what I have to say in 10 pictures. And a lot of people don't feel that way. Like the book I did for Leica, No Plan B, they said, just do a retrospective of the last 25 years. And I was done in like an afternoon. And Tom, the guy from Leica, is like, how do you do that? And I said, well, all these pictures I like, and I think they say what I have to say. I don't think a lot of photographers, it's not even confidence. I don't think they understand that you could do it less than more. And that's an editing issue. I've never sat there and go, should this be darker or lighter? Well, no, I have, but it's never like there's three pictures that are similar and I don't know which one it is right away. It's just, so that's my personal thing. I absolutely think you get an editor. I've seen too many people be edited and go, this was great.
And the thing David was saying about people wanting to show how hard they're working or what they really mean, a lot of photographers don't always trust their pictures to tell the story. And there's a thing that David says all the time, which is trust your audience. Like he and I have agree on the idea that we're kind of single picture people. Within a project, like the whole book has to be a sort of cohesive thought, but we also want each image to stand on its own. So there are people that edit differently. There are people that do these like conceptual books where there's a lot of what I would call filler, but they feel like they need to connect this photograph to this photograph. Like it's opinion. Like my opinion is that I want every photograph in a book that I make for myself. I want to be able to hold up any photograph in that book and stand by it as a photographer. David is really good at getting down to, you don't need this one. This is kind of filler. This doesn't say anything new. There's the balance of like, even such specific things as like indoor and outdoor. You don't want a whole bunch of indoors together than an outdoor. You want to vary a mood. You want to tell a story and you want to have an ending. Not tell a story chronologically, but somehow emotionally tell a story and have it have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Just like making a mixtape, just like making a movie. And somehow he can do that. I cannot. This is my example. My son loves to play chess. I hate to play chess because I look at a chessboard and there are just too many options and I could drown in all the options. And I look at a table full of pictures and I can tell you, leave them out for a week and I'll walk by and be like, this one doesn't belong. This one doesn't belong. But I can drown in the options of, are we telling a story literally? Are we telling a story chronologically? Does this one need to be here? Does
that's
it not?
never crossed my mind when I'm editing.
He somehow has like, he just does it. And it's to me, it's right, which is why he's a great editor. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got one more, and I think we'll wrap it up with this one if we can. How did you start working together?
You can handle that one.
Let's see. We met on Facebook.
No, Ashley was in a group of photographers. That's how, a collective. That's how
true.
I met you guys.
I was in a group.
That's how I met you.
And he wrote about a couple people in the group, and I Facebook friended
I was writing
him.
for magazines back then, and I wrote about one or two of the photographers. And then I saw all their work. And I think, were you in New York? And I said,
I was in New York,
I don't
so
remember.
we met up and we started talking about work, and he was actually really helpful to me to talk to someone about
You
my
brought
work.
a pile of pictures, remember?
I did. And he looked through my pictures and he's putting them in two piles. And I was certain this was a good and a bad pile. And I'm like talking and talking and talking. And then he told me to stop talking. And I started defending my pictures and he told me to stop talking. And then he said, do you realize you have two?
I told you, if you don't stop talking, I'm not going to do it.
And then he said, do you realize you have two kinds of pictures here? So he wasn't doing good and bad. It was like, do you realize you have portraits and like kind of more environmental pictures? And I had literally never realized that. So we started talking about photography. We started talking about my work. And this is how we got to the conversation of Darth Vader. And he really helped me get through finishing that project. And then we published a book, and then we've had a publishing company for 5 years. So I don't know. Facebook is the answer.
Social media.
Social media.
Well, I want
Blessing
to
and a
thank
curse.
both Ashley and David. This has been a fantastic afternoon.
Thank you
It was
so much
fun.
for having us.
And thank all of you that showed up today. Next month, we have Mark Durant talking about running, falling, flying, floating, crawling, and Flynn Larson and her book Cosmic Dance. So we'll see you all next month, which is on April 17th, by the way. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thanks so
you.
much.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thanks, guys. You're awesome.